Hello, everyone. I'm Fábio Pando, Horizon Consulting CEOs. Horizon is a business innovation company focused on customer experience. Welcome back to New Horizon Talks. The New Horizon Talks is a program whose main objective is to conducting these discussions about innovation, technology, and its impacts on our society. You can watch the New Horizon Talks on Horizon Consulting's YouTube channel. Every Tuesday at 8 o'clock p.m., a new video with a different subject. Today, I am pleased to speak again with Stuart Hardy, who is the New Cannibal CEO and the people engineer. Please join me in welcoming Stuart today. How's everything, Stuart? It's good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. I enjoyed our last chat. It's nice to think we have these regularly.
Yes.
And fortunately, you picked a topic that's big enough for us to have lots of conversations about. So yeah, it's great to be back again.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the topic of our conversation today is how can organizations promote innovation and value creation? Once again, how can organizations promote innovation and value creation? I'd like to start our conversation with a question to you, Stuart. I always say that whoever manages to innovate is not the company that has the ideas. It is the company that manages to implement them in the market. However, few companies are able to do this. Do you believe that it's possible for a company to be innovative if in these internal cultures predominates a strong hierarchy and the command control vision? Do you believe that there are other reasons besides this?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, first of all, we have to consider what we mean by innovation in the business and company context.
Yes.
In order to better answer the question. For me, I think part of the challenge is that a lot of organizations, businesses, NGOs, etc., have become rather confused about what innovation means.
Yeah.
In that they confuse it possibly with business optimization, with what we used to call research and development, etc., etc. And because of that, a lot of the activity that takes place in business, which may be as a consequence of those hierarchical decisions that you're talking about, often top down, we want to be an innovative company, so it's now part of our strategy, let's roll it out into the business, don't really understand what they're trying to become in their organization, to become an innovative organization. For example, buying a football table and an Xbox and having a minibar full of beers in your office does not make you an innovative organization.
For sure.
Bringing out new products and services does not make you an innovative organization. For me, an innovation is inherently linked to behaviors. And if you behave in an innovative way in your organization, then new and maybe disruptive products and services are a byproduct of that behavior. And that's obviously integrally connected with the relationship you have with clients and people you serve and so on and so forth. So I think the first thing to consider is, assuming the business has an understanding that they are looking for innovative behaviors in their organization, then a program has to be put in place to create and develop those and so on. Because typically, historically, most businesses and organizations don't behave particularly innovatively. This is a more recent phenomenon.
And I have an opinion, but I'd like to listen to you. You have a great experience in this subject, Stuart. What are the main difficulties that a company has implementing an innovation? Not just thinking about innovation, but implementing the market.
Actually doing it. Yeah. The biggest problem I've found is I've worked with different size organizations now in different places around the world with different cultures, different approaches to business and so on. And I think the challenge is that any organization that decides or embarks on a transformational journey to become more innovative is obviously starting from a status quo. And very often that status quo is not particularly what we might think of as innovative. What this means is that you need to adopt new behaviors, new ways of working, new processes and mechanisms to support that in order to become innovative in the way that you work together to drive these new innovative products and services. But unfortunately, what people often forget is that that means typically you have to stop doing things. Everybody knows with change and transformation and becoming more innovative as an organization and changing behaviorally is a change process. Everybody knows that letting go of doing things is often harder than doing new things. So letting go of old habits, old ways of working, old processes that become embedded in an organization are quite difficult to let go of. And yet we know this, but organizations seldom focus on helping people let go. They always focus on doing the new stuff, and often that can be top down, it can be directive, and so on and so forth. So what happens in the individual's mind is they think, oh, I need to do all this innovative new stuff, be agile, be collaborative, be creative, etc., in addition to my day job. I need to do this as well as what I've done for the last 15, 20 years in my business. And my brain and my working practices are at capacity. I'm already busy, and now someone wants me to do new stuff, innovative stuff. Where am I going to find the space in my busy day to do this? And the most success I've had recently, in particular in organizations, is helping them better understand the different things they have to remove, the different things they have to let go of to create the organizational space for the new ways of working and so on. Because what I learned was that these new ways of working are not powerful enough to erode the old ways on their own. And I often talk about in my work creative destruction, if that makes sense. This idea that not only do we have to create the new, but we also have to creatively remove the old.
I always thought about this, what's happening in companies such as Kodak, Blockbuster, and a lot of companies that suddenly they disappear. It's unbelievable, isn't it? Stuart?
Yeah, I mean, these are well-documented companies that were perhaps seen as innovative in their day, who have now disappeared. But I think going back to what we were saying before, if our understanding of innovation is correct, I would argue that these companies were not innovative. They were product driven in their early days, and they had a very successful product, which they were determined to capture the most value from. And typically these companies are in volume capture mode in the way they work. So they're more focused on selling stuff and capturing value, a large portion of the market, than they are on creating new sources of value.
Yes.
And the challenge is that when organizations fall into this trap of being very volume capture focused, and monopolies are the best examples of this, utility companies, power companies, etc. We have to use them, so all they're interested in is getting our money. They're not very innovative. They don't want to create new sources of value. The problem is when the pressure is on and it becomes an issue of price or technology or market share, they do what is often referred to as horizontal dancing. So they try and optimize, they try and go back to their core business, they consider many different strategies, they go through cost control, they go through restructuring, all in an attempt to maintain the old business somehow, maintain the volume. and then making the jump to actually creating new sources of revenue by being innovative in the way they think, they become very risk averse to this. Because it's risky, it's going to cost them money, they're probably already losing money. And companies you describe like Kodak, like Nokia, these kind of companies fail to see the danger of relying on a volume capture model. And the great companies, you know, if you like, the Googles, the Amazons and so on, are quite skillful at capturing lots of volume. We all know how much these mega companies are worth. Apple's another example. But also creating new sources of value as they go along in different ways. And even these great ones are vulnerable. I mean, I think we're all aware of conversations going on about companies like Apple. You know, has Apple lost its way a little bit in terms of creating new and innovative products and services, or are they just in volume capture mode, repeating the same old thing, little optimizations, little changes? Automotive is a great example of this. Automotive cars, obviously change is coming with environmental controls and electric vehicles and self-driving and so on, but they are determined to hang on to the old model of diesel and petrol. They're bringing out new models, they're bringing out different approaches to still using diesel, to still using petrol and so on, to squeeze more blood from this same old stone. And yet they know they have to innovate. Eventually they have to innovate because all of this will be gone. So it's very difficult to sort of mandate a top-down approach and so on and so forth.
You know that recently I have a conversation with a friend of mine who is a businessman, and he is a owner of a company here in Brazil, a meat company. And he's one of this most known brand here in some capitals such as São Paulo, Rio, or something like that. And
Brazil is famous for its meat.
Yes. He has a very nice brand. And he told me one of the most interesting quotes about innovation. He said to me, once every 5 years, I closed my company and I rebuilt everything. I just maintain the brand and the company's code. Every year, I close totally my company and I restart again with new products, new services, new process, internal process, everything. It just maintain the brand. It's very interesting approach.
It's fascinating, yeah. I mean, it's a great example, I think, of how a company owner or a CEO recognizes the need for innovative behavior. And doesn't want his organization to fall into the trap of building old habits, of reinforcing traditional ways of working and so on. He recognizes that he needs to disrupt that somehow by keeping that freshness of a fresh pair of eyes every so often. And these are he's doing it on an organizational level, but on an interpersonal level within the business, we also have to have these same types of processes. And a lot of this is involved with shifting from an inside out to an outside in mindset. Innovation typically doesn't come from within. Optimization comes from within. Initially, innovation was an internal process, and then we moved from internal innovation to more of an open innovation model where we would take our own ideas and combine them with outside ideas and so on to come up with these solutions. But we've moved beyond that now. We're into a networked innovation model where ecosystems of organizations and people are getting together to create networked ideas and networked innovative platforms, the Airbnbs, the Ubers, these kind of organizations, to create new sources of value in new ways. And I think it's brilliant that this guy's kind of doing this internally as a continuous refresh of what keeps them going.
The interesting thing that he's a very innovative company, and he's a very innovative guy, and he works in a very commodity product. It's meat.
Yeah,
it's not technology. It's not IT services. It's meat.
But I think that's a very good point, because I think part of this notion of what innovation truly is, it's not just what we sell, it's how we sell it.
Yes, perfect.
You know, nowadays, customers and audiences around the world have moved beyond the product mentality. They're looking for experiences, they're looking for events, they're looking for activities. We've transcended mere products, and that's been liberated by technology, of course. We can now do this for our clients, we can now shape their experiences, and my guess is, you know, the reason he's so successful is not because it's meat, it's because the experience he continuously renews to give his clients is one that they embrace with and engage with and want to be a part of. I mean, I know from my own experience, you can get great meat from lots of places in Brazil.
Yes.
But, you know, he's doing something different that's added value for his clients and so on. And that, of course, is where much of the innovation is now focused, not so much in the product itself.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of that. And it's another issue is currently the most modern companies have set up new structures for some of their internal areas, such as the famous agile structure. Do you believe that this is just enough for a company to be innovative? Because everybody talks about it, agile. Everything is agile, but I don't know.
It's interesting. I often, when I'm talking with clients, I use the analogy of zombies, and I talk about innovation zombies.
Yes.
So these are people who are like zombies who are really dead, but they think they're alive.
Yes.
And innovation zombies are like this as well. These are companies that think they're being innovative, but actually they're not. So they're like business zombies in a sense. And you've given a very good example of one type of zombie. I mean, we have those innovation zombies who put in the Xboxes, they put in the football tables, they put in the mini bars, and they think that makes them cool, and they get rid of uniforms and they all wear t-shirts and shorts, or like the Google offices in Sao Paulo, they put these lovely bean bags outside on the grass and they think it makes them innovative. But there are other companies, like you just described, a different type of innovation zombie that has agile, sprint, Kanban, and maybe they have hackathons, maybe they have, you know, these kind of processes rather than accessories, and they think that by using these tools and approaches, they will become innovative.
Perfect.
What they forget is that these are simply tools and approaches that will facilitate innovative behavior. They will help you move from innovative behavior to great products and services, because they're tools. They're tools to help you do that. And a lot of companies out there make this mistake. They make the mistake of thinking that, okay, now we're working with sprints, now we're using Scrum, now we're using this. So, you know, we must be innovating. But what they're usually doing is doing what they've always done in a different way. Instead of doing things in a different, new way and so on, refreshing, like your colleague with his meat company.
They implement a different new tools and maintain his old mindset. It doesn't work. Simply doesn't.
No, it doesn't work. I mean, in fact, but you know, very often I've come across organizations that have worked extensively with the people to help them with the mindset change that's needed to actually liberate innovative behavior, and they have very few tools and technologies. In fact, a lot of the companies that do this effectively are removing tools and mechanisms and processes. They're deprocessing, if you like, to free up more space for innovation. So there's less control, there's less process, there's less structure. I give you a great example. I did some work with Accenture. I think I can use their name. One of the world's big consulting companies took over as part of their move into the creative world. They bought quite a few creative agencies.
It's true.
And I worked post-merger with Accenture and one of those companies. And it was extremely difficult for them to integrate the creative world of an agency with the structured and processed world of a traditional consulting company.
I can imagine.
Because one typically liberates creativity and innovative ideas and has less structure to allow that to happen. And the other one is very processed, is very structured and meticulous and focused because it was designed and created for a different purpose. And merging those together has been hugely traumatic for these big companies to find a medium. And yet, I know from my own experience that great creativity and innovation, in order to be liberated and to be effective, also needs a bit of structure. This is not just a crazy, chaotic white paper type exercise. Innovative processes do need structure, they do need direction, they do need focus to ensure that we take creative ideation and turn it into practical products and services. But we need to do this in a way that is more divergent and not too convergent, that reduces thinking and possibility and exploration and so on.
And another thing, how can a company can measure its market value creation in the long term? It's not easy.
It's a very good question. I mean, volume capture is easy to measure. It's market share.
Yes, perfect.
It's customer churn. It's how we're losing customers, how we're gaining customers, and so on. But how do we measure? How do we place targets on value creation, for example? And for me, I think it's more a process. It's an acceptance of, by default, we have to value create. Otherwise, we will never maintain any sort of value capture mode. If you look at the relationship between value creativity and value capture, there are laws of gravity at play. And if you're in volume capture mode, you will always slide across towards losing volume. Because you'll have new entrants, you'll have price competition, you'll have all of these different things. Mobile phone companies, great volume capture model. All they're worried about is customer churn. All they're worried about is losing customers to other mobile phone companies. Because this law of gravity reduces their business all the time. So I think having an acceptance that this is going to happen and believing that fundamental to maintaining revenues, to maintaining market share, is to also continuously create new sources of value, means that in a way they never have to answer that question, if that makes sense.
For sure.
It doesn't matter what the target is, we have to do this. Because we won't maintain our capture targets that we have. If we don't come up with the new, if we don't continuously build excitement and new experiences for our clients, we will lose them. You know, even if some of those don't go on to develop into big money-making market share products and services, some of them will, but if some of them don't, it doesn't matter, because consumers nowadays have an appetite for the new. They have an appetite, they're fickle. They need constantly feeding with new stuff, new apps, new devices, new solutions, new things. And if we don't do that, they go to somebody who can give us that. The traditional world of customer loyalty has changed. And this started a long time ago. I remember working on a program for General Motors in the 1990s. And we introduced a customer service program from General Motors in the US to Europe. And in America, in the 90s, they had very much the car buying culture was a family buying culture. In that if dad was a Cadillac man or a Pontiac man, when his son was 18, he used to take him down to the dealership and buy him his first Cadillac because that's what dad drove. And they tried to introduce this same family buying culture into Europe. And Europe said, no way, we're not a family buying culture. We all read the automotive press. We know what we want to buy. In fact, if my dad bought a Cadillac, then I want a Pontiac because I want to be different to my dad. You know, so these things don't often translate, you know, and this for me was the start of this new generation growing up who wants the new, who wants the different, who's looking for innovation. So being a traditional company, department stores is a great example. Department stores are dying all over the world, the big traditional department store, because they're sticking to the old model and they're sticking to their loyal customers, but those loyal customers are in their 60s now, and they're going to be dead soon. And so who's the next generation of customers? You brought interesting approaches about companies' reflections. And many companies talk about creating value. But I believe that they should make this internal reflection. This value creation that we seek means value to whom? It's only for it's only for shareholders and customers. I believe that the value generated will not have great difference in the market. How should companies consider other stakeholders in the value creation process? I think this is part and parcel of this new notion around value creation. It's a much broader spectrum of stakeholders than we used to consider. You know, traditionally with big companies, value creation was, you know, was much more connected with capture. So it's how can I satisfy my stakeholders? How can I increase market share and so on? Now we recognize that value creation is a more holistic and sophisticated concept. How can I create value for my employees so that they want to work with me? I have their loyalty, they want to stay with me. Because if they do that, then they're more likely to create more value for my business. They're more likely to engage and commit and so on, and that drives my numbers. But also, of course, social purpose that we talked a little bit about in our last discussion. We need to think about value creation for the planet and for the future, for society and so on. So I think value creation is a blended approach nowadays, because we recognize that if we incorporate the value of social purpose into our value creation, then that's better for our brand and it connects us better in a more ethical and focused way with consumers. If we keep our employees happy and we create value for them, which isn't necessarily how we used to think of it. Value for employees used to be pay. That was it. You know, now we think about working environments, particularly with COVID. I think our views post-COVID on what's value creation for employees is going to shift. You know, many more companies will start working from home. Work-life balances will change more dynamically than they had in the past, because we recognize that, you know, if we value our employees and in doing so create value for them, we'll get more out of them, and they don't necessarily have to be in the office 9 to 5 and so on. So it's all harmonized, it's blended, it's a more sophisticated concept than it used to be, I think.
When you talk about the companies regarding to sustainability issue, there is a term, it calls greenwash, when the companies talk about sustainability, but it's not true. Do you believe you can talk about innovation wash in some companies?
Oh, absolutely. And this goes back to another category of zombies. You you know, there are lots of big organizations who belong to innovation networks, or they belong to hubs, or they, I can think of large organizations that support co-working spaces. Because interestingly, I read a very interesting report lately where it's been discovered that many of these big companies, and I know you have them in Brazil as well, who, if I think of Kubo, and your bank in Brazil, who supports this lovely Kubo space in Sao Paulo. They support up and coming businesses and so on. A recent report, I think by McKinsey, showed that the return on investment for this is incredibly small. In most cases, they lose money. They're not actually out of these many startups that they support and so on. Very little of this goes to market. Very little of this translates into revenue for these companies long term and so on. But it makes them look good. It makes them look like they're innovative. They're connected with their audience. They're modern, and it's a brand statement. You know, it's the greenwashing you're talking about. It's like a brand accessory. I like to think of it. It's like a very nice handbag of innovation.
I always thought about this, but until now, I didn't know that some guys like McKinsey has this research. I'm trying to find it because I always believe in that.
Don't worry, I'll send it to you.
Perfect, please.
But it's what's interesting is that where we're seeing this in the countries that started these kind of innovation hubs and so on early on. So in the UK, in Germany, in the US, they've already started to wind down these operations because they recognize that, you know, their money's not being well spent, that actually they're better off being more specific in their activity. And what we're starting to see, in fact, new cannibals at the moment, hopefully in the near future, we're going to be launching a new platform where we will be curating startups for organizations to get involved with. Using a panel of experts, a panel of experienced senior executives, we will curate a number of startups which we will then pass over to businesses so they can focus their investment more effectively. And we will also provide those startups with the right support services to ensure that they get to market successfully, they connect with investors, etc., through the stages of their growth. So we can already see an evolution of this, but obviously in countries like Brazil and other parts of the world where they're later on this journey, they're still big companies who think it's cool to have these beautiful buildings with lots of innovators in them and so on.
When I saw these cool places, I always thought, come on, guys, it's a show off, isn't it? It's not serious. But,
a classic example, I mean, I hope there's nobody from PwC listening to this. I have many friends at PwC, and recently, like a lot of other organizations, and particularly consulting companies, they want to get into the innovation game. And traditionally, PwC, their business model in consulting has been based around finance and accounting and so on. They're the world's most famous accounting company, I would guess. And they do the books of the world's great companies and governments and all sorts. But when they started to do this, like a lot of companies who had a lot of money, they decided, okay, we're going to create what they call experience centers. And these experience centers are sections, literally physical sections. So I visited the one in Amsterdam, I visited the one in Frankfurt. So in Amsterdam, they took out one floor of their huge offices in Amsterdam and turned it into an experience center. So what did that mean? That meant spending 22 million on toys and cosmetics in the experience center. 22 million.
On toys.
So huge big screen TVs.
Yes.
A data room, a sensory room where you could smell things.
I like that. Sensory room.
Super cool coffee machines.
Oh, again,
you name them. 22 million worth of innovation gadgetry.
And
no business.
No business. Mm-hmm.
No.
Nice.
And they're really having to rethink this model. And because, you know, having this amazing accessory doesn't turn a company with the history of PwC into an innovation company.
Yes. Yes.
You know, and you have to get people with the right talent in there. You have to get all the right ingredients in there. It's not just these accessories that make the difference. And I heard in Frankfurt recently that PwC has bought an innovation company because they've recognized that just having an experience center doesn't work.
Yeah. That do you believe that internal teams in companies in general are ready to perform their role well in a market that's highly demanded for innovation, value creation? You have a huge experience in this. No, it's a simple answer. Most companies are very badly prepared for this because, you know, they have a legacy of doing it very differently. Yeah.
And, you know, there's also this perception that in most companies I go into that are rather traditional or large, big history, they think that all of this is taking place out there. Someone else is doing it. We're not doing this. And we need to get that's out there and we need to bring it in somehow into our organization. And I had an experience of this with Brazilians recently. I ran an amazing conference in Madrid a couple of years ago for 120 senior business people to visit Madrid. We wanted to expose them to some provocative and interesting, innovative experiences in Madrid that they could take back to Brazil and reflect on and hopefully influence the way they worked. And I thought it was fascinating that we had some representatives there from Google, another one from Yahoo, I think. Everybody wanted to sit on the table that the guy from Google was on. As if somehow by sitting on the table that this guy from Google was on, this innovation perception about Google would be absorbed into my business. You know, that just because obviously Google must be innovative because they're Google. We're not. So I'm going to sit at this guy's table and somehow I'll learn. And of course that doesn't happen. You know, that's not the reality of doing this. It's much more complex than that. It's indeed many of these perceived to be innovative organizations are not particularly innovative. You know, they're really very badly prepared in these organizations to do this. They have a legacy history. They often, unfortunately, in my experience, separate innovative activities from the main daily business that they're involved with. Good example of this is a very large, well-known food and beverage company that I work with in Argentina. Has a very innovative, young, dynamic marketing lady who's won lots of awards for her work and so on, who is in charge of the business there, the marketing business, and she runs something once every couple of years, or she ran something once every couple of years that was cool. It was an innovation hub type thing, external, bringing together customers, academics, technologists, startups, lots of provocative people to an off-site to come up with amazing new ideas for products and services in the organization. So to bring the outside in to this traditional F&B organization. And I think they've run it for 4 to 5 years. They've come up with some amazing ideas. They've really looked through the ecosystem, they've collaborated, they've done all that good stuff out there in this hub, off-site in amazing locations. What do you think's happened since? Nothing. They haven't implemented any of it.
Yes.
Because what happens is they take these ideas back to the business, the operational people go, no thanks. It's too innovative, our customers won't like it, it's not core business, we don't understand how to develop it, it's too high risk, we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And so they continue to do the old stuff, they keep horizontal dancing, and it's because they still think they still think inside out, not outside in. They have what we call a pipeline mentality.
Yes.
So we make stuff and we get it to people, not we go out there, we work with people to find out what they need, and then we make stuff to fit it.
Yeah.
It's all internal development and so on. So until they fundamentally change, and ultimately this comes down to leadership. You know, many of the people I talk to in these companies have been brought up through traditional management colleges, they've done their MBAs, they've worked with traditional consulting companies that have taught them how to run a pipeline business. How do I make stuff and sell it as much as possible to target audiences? Nowadays, the best businesses in the world do it the other way around. The best businesses in the world go outside the business, look to connect new sources of value together, and then build a product or service to drive it. Like Uber, like Airbnb. Take Marriott Hotels is a nice example. Marriott Hotels, if you want to rethink or reimagine Marriott Hotels, how many thousands of euros have you got to spend on each room in those 200 plus hotels worldwide that Marriott owns in order to transform the brand or to create a new product or service? You've got to spend millions and millions and millions of euros to do that. They've been in business for over 200 years. Airbnb, for example, has been in business, what is it now, 9 years, 8 years, or whatever. Their market cap is bigger than Marriott Hotels, and they don't even own a single property.
Yes.
They can transform a marketplace without investing any money or owning a single property in doing that. That's the difference in the thinking.
Yeah. There's no tangible assets in the company. No tangible. Yeah, it's interesting. Now, what I see in my experience with the company, different companies, that the CEOs has this vision, but they have no idea how to implement it, and middle management, there's no idea what he's talking about. It's a huge gap between the CEO view and middle management.
Yes. What I find really interesting is that on the whole, the C-level gets it now. And obviously what we've seen in recent years is many of our older C-level executives are starting to disappear, and younger people are coming on C-level boards now around the world, and more diverse groups as well. It's great to see more women coming onto our boards and so on than we've had in the past. So the board level has had a kind of refresh in recent years, and on the whole they get it, as you say. They know where they should be going and so on and so forth. At the other end of the spectrum, I also see younger people coming into organizations who also get it. You know, they know, and they're also the new consumers themselves. So they're the ones demanding all this new innovation and demanding these new products and services. So they get it. And as you rightly say, it's the ones in the middle that don't. And part of the reason they don't get it is because they've been the ones that have been so operational. You know, in many cases, they've been responsible over the years for cementing these processes, these structures, making them work, optimizing them, setting them in stone, maintaining quality, maintaining cost control, all these very rigid things to optimize the business. They've not been involved with strategy up there, and they've not been involved with the people down there too much either. That's been the job of HR and so on traditionally. So these are the ones that really struggle to change. You know, that's why in this company I described, you know, the marketing CEO gets it, wants to run these cool things, but when they get the great ideas and they take them back to the operational people, they resist them. So most of the work I do in organizations is with this middle ground. The time needs to be invested with this middle ground. And this is where you have to do the most creative destruction. You have to work with these people to really dismember, to dismantle this very rigid things they bought into over the years. I worked on a fascinating project with a very big company in Europe recently where they practically wanted to, I talked about them about this idea of creative destruction, and they said, yeah, you know, we have some seriously old-fashioned thinkers in our business. So how can we do this? How can we do this practically? And so what we did was we got groups together of their youngest people, their new hires, their apprentices, their young people, some startups they were involved with. We brought some people from outside too. And we got together 50 of these people with 50 of their most old-fashioned, most traditional middle and upper middle managers. And we asked the younger people to tell these people what they would take out. What would they stop doing and why would they stop doing it? But most importantly, not just to take stuff away, but what would they replace it with? How can we rethink this process in a way that is more agile, is more dynamic, that creates more innovation, more space for creative thinking and so on? And these were amazingly productive sessions because what they did was they accelerated an organic process that would normally take place over months in a business. You know, we hope in business that when we hire young people and we bring in these new talents, that this new blood, as we call it, will bring new stuff into the company and so on. The problem is that in big companies, it usually doesn't. They usually catch the same virus that we have, and very soon they're behaving in exactly the same way as the people in the old company and so on. They get infected. And the power of the old is much stronger than the power of the new. So we have to put mechanisms in place that will actually capture this new blood, these new ideas, turn them into new processes, new ways of working and so on, instead of making all of this fit into the old all the time.
Well, Stuart, I love to talk to you. You bring a very sharp view, and you have a huge experience.
It's not the truth, it's just an opinion.
No, but your opinion is based in your huge experience. It's very, very nice. And I think the main object for these talks, this New Horizon talks, is just this, is to bring an interesting view based in fact in your experience around the world. No?
I mean, I think the crucial thing to do is, you know, we often use in my work, and I'm sure in your work, this analogy of the balcony and the dance floor. You know, business people spend so much time on the dance floor, working there, optimizing the business, working with their employees. And we really have to get back up onto the balcony and have these internal conversations about strategy, about where we are, looking down at all this happening. And I think if conversations like this provoke people to get up on the balcony and to think about, you know, how can I in my business make proactive choices, like your friend with the meat company. You know, he's making choices about how he wants to stay on the balcony and not just be a production line year after year after year. If these talks help to do that, then our time has been well spent.
Well, this conversation, of course, could go on for a long time, but
as always,
we have to end today's conversation. I would like to thank you very much for your participation today, Stuart.
My pleasure. I look forward to the next one.
Okay. I will be waiting for you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. for a new theme here in the Horizon Consulting YouTube channel on the New Horizon Talks program. Thank you very much, and until then, bye.
Okay, thanks to you and your listeners. Bye.
Bye.